Madam President, our workforce has changed a lot in the last few decades. 30 years ago, the majority of families with children had only one parent working outside the home. More of the country's low-wage workers were teenagers earning some extra spending money. But today, 2/3 of families with children rely on earnings from both parents. And the millions of low-wage workers in our country are far less likely to be teens supplementing their allowance and far more likely to be adults struggling to support their family. It's also gotten a lot harder for young people just starting out to find work that puts them on a strong path. And there's a very concerning pattern of young people dropping out of the labor force rather than keeping up their search. Madam President, these are the kinds of trends that we need to be thinking about as we look for ways to help today's workforce succeed in today's economy. And there are many steps we can and absolutely should take to tackle the barriers our workers and our families are facing. We should start with raising the minimum wage because no one working full-time in the United States today should live in poverty. And because the low-wage workers in today's economy who are putting in very long hours while raising their children, paying taxes and trying to pay the bills deserve a better shot at success. But that's not the last step we should take. Madam President, as we are looking for ways to expand opportunity for struggling workers and families, we should be using every tool in the box, including our tax code. Policies like the Earned Income Tax Credit have succeeded in helping millions of households lift themselves out of poverty, which is why Republicans and Democrats have come together to strengthen the EITC so many times in the past. But today, too many struggling workers and families are left behind under our outdated tax code. It's time to build on these efforts to support work, including the critical expansions of the EITC in 2009, which should be made permanent, and update our tax code so that it reflects the needs of today's workforce. That is why I'm proud to be here today to introduce the 21st Century Worker Tax Cut Act. It's a bill that would complement critical reforms like raising the minimum wage by providing targeted tax cuts designed for today's workforce, paid for by closing wasteful loopholes that both Democrats and Republicans have proposed eliminating. Madam President, the 21st Century Worker Tax Cut Act would put in place a new tax deduction to help struggling families with two workers keep more of what they earn. The way our tax code is currently structured, the second earner in a household often pays a higher tax rate on his or her earnings than the first. Making matters worse, when a second earner decides to enter the workforce, the family usually faces many new costs like childcare or transportation. The family can lose eligibility for credits like EITC and other benefits. Add it all up, and many struggling two-earner families today end up taking home a smaller percentage of their paycheck than many of the wealthiest households in America do. These realities often discourage a potential second earner, like a mother who's considering re-entering the workforce from returning to her professional career. Struggling families face a lot of challenges to getting ahead today. The very least we can do is keep our tax code from forcing families to take a half step backward for every step forward. And that's exactly the problem that the 21st Century Worker Tax Cut Act will help to solve. This bill will give our working families a 20% deduction on the second earner's income. A mom or dad who goes back in the workforce and brings home an extra, say, $25,000 would get a $5,000 deduction. For a family in the 25% bracket, that means $1,250 back in their pocket for groceries or childcare or transportation or retirement savings. Madam President, the bill also reflects the reality that workers without dependent children and young workers who are just starting out are being left behind under the current EITC. My colleague, Senator Brown, has been a leader on this issue. He is a co-sponsor of the bill I'm introducing today. Unlike low-income workers with kids at home, workers without dependent children receive little or nothing from this credit. As workers file their 2013 tax returns this spring, a single worker with no dependent children is eligible for a maximum credit of only $487. She's entirely phased out of the credit once her income reaches just $14,340, which is about what a full-time minimum wage worker would earn in a year. And young childless workers under 25 who are starting out in a tough labor market, they aren't eligible at all. In an economy today where more low-wage earners are middle-aged and where young people are struggling to gain a toehold in the job market, it doesn't make any sense. Our bill, the 21st Century Worker Tax Cut Act, would increase the EITC for workers without dependent children to about $1,400 next year and expand the income range over which workers are eligible for the credit. And it would also lower the eligibility age for the childless worker to qualify for the EITC from 25 years old to 21, so that young workers without dependents get the same incentives that have helped so many others get on their feet. Now, the Treasury Department estimated that these EITC changes, similar to these, would help more than 13 million struggling workers climb the economic ladder. So as we expand the EITC, Madam President, we have a responsibility to do everything we can to make sure this credit is going straight to the workers and families who need it. And part of that responsibility is to make sure that the EITC claims are filed correctly. Professional tax return preparers complete 70% of these EITC claims. Under our bill, the 21st Century Worker Tax Cut, they would receive twice the current penalty if they don't follow due diligence requirements that we're putting in place by the IRS. Madam President, workers and families are playing fair, and the biggest corporations should too. That's why this bill would be paid for by closing loopholes the biggest corporations take advantage of. The 21st Century Worker Tax Cut would draw on a proposal from my colleague, Senator Reed of Rhode Island, who is also a co-sponsor of this bill. His proposal closes a loophole that lets corporations claim outsized tax breaks by paying their executives in stock options instead of regular paychecks. This bill would also stop multinational corporations from shifting profits into tax havens like Bermuda and the Cayman Islands to avoid paying their fair share. Now, Madam President, there is bipartisan support for closing those loopholes. Both Democrats and House Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp have proposed eliminating each of them. And updating our tax code to give tax breaks to our struggling workers instead of big corporations is just the right thing to do. As we continue this important debate about how to expand opportunity to those who are struggling today, we need to make sure we are giving today's workforce the best shot in today's economy. We should increase our outdated minimum wage to give millions of workers a raise, and then Democrats and Republicans need to come together to update our tax code and give today's struggling workers the tax relief they deserve. The 21st Century Worker Tax Cut would be a strong, fiscally responsible step towards that bipartisan goal, and I am really hopeful that we can get this done for our workers as quickly as possible. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.